Happy Sunday. Happy June. How's everyone doing? I am Sharla K. Sharla Cornegay coming live to you guys with another Forever Friends Academy live episode. How have you guys been? I've missed being on here with you guys. Hopefully I can get you in here to have a nice, lovely conversation with me tonight. Let me introduce myself to anyone who might be new to my podcast and my show. My name is Sharla Cornegay, aka Sharla K. I am an author, a recording artist, creator of Intersect coaching, as well as Forever Friends Academy, where I do group coaching membership. So welcome. Hey, folks. Hey, it's another one. Sparks, Mr. De Jesus. How you guys doing? Thank you for popping in with me. I so appreciate it. You didn't really miss anything. Just introduce myself. Good evening. How you doing? So that is who I am for those of you who are new to the podcast. We talk about all relationship topics. I'm a firm believer that there are principles, fundamental principles that you can use to guide your relationship so that you can basically, get the most out of every stage that your relationship would most definitely go into. So let's get into the topic of tonight. Monica, oh my goodness, I love you. How are you? Thank you for popping in. So, conversation of tonight, as you guys know, usually the people who come in with me on the regular, I usually start with a quote and then I'll have the question for tonight. Tonight I wanted to, I'll put out the quote. I'll put out the question and we'll get into tonight's topic. I'm sure if you are on any of the platforms, you saw the title that I put, The New Look and Journey of Single Motherhood. So we're going to get into the topic tonight. And tonight is Sunday. So it is, what I like to call relationship Sunday scenarios, where I'll give you guys a scenario. We get to play the therapist and the coach and dive in and extract some principles from the situation that I bring up. But let me give you guys the quote for tonight. It comes from a divorce attorney that maybe some of you guys might have checked out on YouTube, maybe might have heard of him. I believe his name is James Sexton. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so horrible. I don't want to mispronounce his name, so I'm just going to look it up. But I love his content. He has been a divorce attorney for, I believe, I said it right, Sexton, James Sexton. He has been a divorce attorney, I believe, for 20 years now, and he serves basically the higher echelon, people who are like billionaires, multimillionaires, and things like that. And so because of all of his experience in dealing with couples going through divorce and things like that, he ends up giving really good relationship advice. So I was looking at a podcast that he was on that I listen to when I have a chance. It's called Diary of a CEO. Check it out. Very good content. I have only saw interviews that have enriched my soul in every way. So anyway, on this podcast, he made a statement that I'm just going to put it in a quote because I thought that it was such a gem that he said. So the quote goes like this: "Do not tiptoe through life and end up safely at death." So basically, we are not here to tiptoe through life and end up safely at death. I'll say it one more time for you guys. And as always, I want you to think about the quote and let me know if you think that is a good quote for you to use to kind of develop your relationships so that it can facilitate continual growth. And, share your thoughts on why you think, one, if it's a truthful quote that you can extract a gem from, a priceless gem from, and why you think it would be useful. It would be a useful type of principle to guide you as you navigate your relationship. So the quote again for tonight is, "We are not here to tiptoe through life and end up safely at death." So that's the quote for tonight. And the question that I wanted to ask you guys, and this is just, sometimes I throw questions out for those who are in, and mind you, it can go for people who are married or who are already in long-term relationships. But a lot of the singles that I coach, a lot of singles that come up to me ask about whether, about questions that they can ask to get to know someone, because it can feel kind of awkward when you are trying to, you're on a date trying to get to know someone. You don't want to grill them like they're on an interview, but you want to ask questions that would help you to learn their character in a very I guess, comfortable, casual way. So, anyway, the question that I would love for you guys to answer is, tell me something that you want to be great at. Tell me something that you want to be great at. And I thought that was a great question to kind of couple with the quote for tonight, that we're not here to tiptoe through life and end up safely at death. Because as we talk about it, I'm sure we'll get into how it's connected. So that is the quote, and that is the question. I guess a little icebreaker question if you're in the dating scene and you want to get to know someone. That's a good question you can ask to get to know their character. And listen, if you're not on the dating scene and you're married or you're in a long-term relationship, it's still a great conversation piece to have periodically, right? Because we change and we go through stages, and I think it is advantageous to ask your partner at different seasons of their life what it is, right, that they are discovering newly about themselves, what it is that they are focusing on about life. Maybe they're having new goals and things that they are aiming for. So hopefully you guys are thinking. Hopefully you guys are thinking, and you'll give me some feedback on the quote, as well as give me some feedback on something in this season that you want to be great at. So let me repeat it one more time, because I know that it takes a little while to type. And of course, I will give you my feedback as I'm waiting for you guys. And whenever you bring me your feedback, I will take a moment and pause and read your statements. So again, the quote for tonight is, "We are not here to tiptoe through life and end up safely at death." We are not here to tiptoe through life and end up safely at death. And the question for tonight is, tell me something that you want to be great at. Tell me something that you want to be great at. So I will start with the feedback on the quote. I said in the beginning that the person who I extracted the quote from, James Sexton, the divorce attorney, I love his content. I think, I always tell my clients that I speak to that one of the best ways to understand love, or the best ways to, know how to have a healthy, successful relationship, is to go to either people, or even I will have them actually go on divorce attorney sites to study, right, the consistent patterns of why relationships fail. Sometimes that's the best place to start, is to learn what not to do, and then leave God the blank canvas to then present to you, right, what is the best way to go about it, or what true love really looks like. So that's something that I do normatively with my clients. So I love his content, and I think the quote is very true. I think at the essence, what I liked about that quote so much when he said it during the podcast was that, I think I know for me, I've had many times in life where either I had an insecurity about something, or I didn't think I was, especially in the area of singing or like professional areas, more so with my career, not so much with relationships, thank God. I didn't have that insecurity in the relationship space, but definitely with finding my voice and unapologetically going into spaces, knowing that sometimes people do, right, judge you right off the back based on how you look and things like that. And because the worlds that I juggle for many people aren't worlds that come together, because I'm a singer-songwriter, a performer, and I also do the coaching, right? And so those two worlds don't usually come together. And the way that I created Interask Coaching, my business, when I initially started doing it, I didn't even think it was going to be a business. I just really wanted to create a safe space for people to come and talk about relationships, because there were so many people who admired the relationship and the marriage that I have with my husband, because we started out as teenagers in high school, and then we literally saw each other grow into adulthood. He grew into manhood, I grew into a womanhood, and they would always see us and they were like, "You guys look like you are fresh, like newlyweds," in the honeymoon. era forever. How do you do that? So, and they would always say, you have to write a book. You have to write a book. You need to tell us what's going, how have you guys been able to maintain this? And so I said, if I'm going to do that, I want to do the research, right? And I really want to hear what the needs are. And so I created literally in my own house. I would sing, I would perform for them, I would cook, and then I would present topics and worksheets and exercises and everything, all for free, by the way. I didn't expect anything from it. I just wanted, it was really out of the gratitude and I guess getting older and understanding how miraculous, it was. Because Ben and I, we were just kind of, innocently going through it, thankfully being led and holding on to God's hand really tight, that the relationship kind of flowed in that way. But it wasn't until I got to a place where, those principles needed to be articulated to other people in a way that they could grasp, in a way that it was tangible, in a way that it could provide results. Then God was like, okay, download. This is the wisdom that you can now, right, translate to other people. This is what you've been doing. You didn't know that this is what it was called, but this is what you were doing. So I did it in my home, and people would literally, couples would, and individuals would start, wait until when the workshops were done. I would go up thinking I'm going to mind my own business. I'm going to go to sleep. Job well done. They would tell my husband, like, oh, we're waiting for Sharla to coach us or counsel us. And I was like, I do not do that. That is not what I signed up for. I'm a performer. I'm not a coach, Mind you, I did graduate with a communication studies degree, but I only did that because, my inner circle said, you need to get a real degree. Like just in case performing doesn't pay the bills. So I did that, not thinking that right in the wisdom of God that it would actually be able to use it in what I would eventually start to do, which is the coaching and writing the books in the future. So, but again, in navigating and bringing those two worlds together, oftentimes people, if I said I was a performer, they didn't think that I would be able to be equipped to do the coaching, right? Sometimes, depending on what you lead with, if you're someone who's multi-talented, if you tell someone that you're doing a certain type of, you have expertise in a certain area, they don't necessarily automatically think, okay, that person's intelligent or that person has, is equipped to be able to venture out into other areas. And so that's what I met oftentimes. And I would feel, I had to build up, and thank God for the support of my husband who would tell me and double down, every time I would feel insecure, like I wasn't going to be able to do it. He would always tell me no, Sharla, you're more than equipped, because unlike, and this is no shade to anybody, because I do believe in, clearly, because I went to school to get my degree, and I believe and I love people who, aim for higher, to learn in the areas that they want to become enriched in. But he would always say, you have the result in your life, right? And we love the scripture where it says, you shall know them by their fruits. So the area that you're venturing in is not an area that your life has not shown evidence that you clearly, right, have been able to be and remain in a position of learning to produce healthy, successful relationships. So that gave me, more, and still gives me and continues to give me the confidence to be able to do it, and how that area pours out into, right, holistically other areas of life. So I think the quote is incredible, and it's essential, because I think all of us can kind of get in a routine, in a rhythm, where you're just used to doing certain things over and over and over again. And those things might not be challenging you. Those things, you along the way, God might be presenting you opportunities to stretch yourself and to stretch your capacity and increase your capacity. And if we are comfortable with the routine that we have developed, or we're comfortable with being complacent in a certain area, then you don't grow. at least to the highest potential, in your life. And I think that's what that quote represents. It's like, okay, no, we were not meant to tiptoe, meaning like you don't exercise your faith to take, proper risk that will then increase or give you a greater reward in life. You don't do things that, might take for you to become a spectacle in front of others, like this, what I'm doing right now. Anybody who knows me, I'm definitely a private person, but I in my communication, in my own little intimate prayers with God, I always say you are very comical because I'm very private, but everything I do is public, right? Whether I'm performing on stage, whether I'm doing lives like this, or whether I'm in front of, peers and audiences coaching and talking about relationship principles and principles of life and things like that. So I think, because I would probably like to be in a corner just learning somewhere and not the person who's like, oh, I know this and let me tell you. I think that's, why God would probably entrust, that I can move forward and be the spectacle for His glory and His name's sake. And so I always say that I will exchange that. I will sacrifice my privacy for spreading God's truth, basically, and I will become a martyr in that way, and I'm okay with that. And I guess that will lean into the question that I asked tonight, which is, what do you want to be great at? And I think that's what I want to be great at. I want to be great at, sacrificing whatever insecurities I have, whatever doubts, whatever resistance, to be a martyr, to sacrifice those things so that I can spread what, the things that I know in life that God has presented to me that I know are really true, So that's what I'd like to be great at. I think if I could, and welcome. Hey, Mr. Butcher, how are you? And Justin, oh my goodness, Justin. I have been listening to your song that you sent me, Just the Way You Are, over and over and over and over and over again, because I think I have written to that song about 3 times. And for anyone listening, sorry guys, I usually like to to welcome the people who come in, even after I've started the podcast. And Justin is a producer, one of the producers from my Christmas album, Snowflakes and Gumdrops, one of my favorite songs on the album he produced, which is It's You on Christmas, which was literally the single that I put out before I released the album. So nonetheless, we are working on, hopefully, a new song gem for you guys to kind of vibe out to and rock with. So I have been listening to it over and over again and literally writing over and over again. For anybody who is a songwriter, you know how that process goes. Sometimes you write something, you're like, oh, that's it. And then you got to go back and it's like, oh, no, that's not it. So I have finally come upon the 3rd version of that song. And I think I've got that aha moment, like, that's going to be it. So we'll see, Justin. We'll see. I think we're getting close to it. And his song, I believe, is probably going to be the first song that I release out of the other many songs that I'm going to release this year. So I had to just let him know the update for that. So for those of you who are new coming into the podcast, the quote that I put out for tonight was, we are not here to tiptoe through life and end up safely at death. We are not here to tiptoe through life and end up safely at death. Of course, let me know if you think that's a truthful principle. Do you think it's something that you can use to navigate how you develop your relationships, right? To facilitate growth. And this is not just on, intimate marital relationships. These are all your relationships, right? Friendships. Definitely, I think with this quote, the examples that I gave you guys were in my professional areas. It wasn't even really in a relationship area. It was, I should say the relationships in more of a professional space is where I feel like this quote best fits for me, to be able to continue to expand and really embrace the opportunities that come my way. Whether I feel like, I'm prepared for it or not, be ready to prepare, as well as sometimes you have to just be placed in the situation for certain skill sets and things that you have inside of you that have been dormant to then be brought out of you. And I think for many of us, that's a very scary, the scary thing to do when you're navigating areas of uncertainty in your life and spaces that you haven't navigated before. But the only way to do that is to literally, is to take the risk of hopefully pulling out a greater or a greatness inside of you that's living dormant. So that is the quote for tonight. And then the question that I asked that you guys came in on was basically that tell me something that you're great at. I'm sorry, not that you're great at, something you want to be great at. Tell me something you want to be great at. And again, this is a question that if you are single and navigating the dating space, you can ask someone to kind of see what feedback you get from them. I think it would be a good conversation starter, but it can help you understand their character as well, depending on how they answer it, right? And how many people have asked you that, right? What do you want to be great at, in this season? So that's what we are talking about. But tonight's topic, so feel free, any of you guys who have been listening, again, once you give me your feedback, I will definitely pause and read your answers. Monica said she loves that quote. Thank you so much, Monica, for that feedback. I do too. I really do. And it really struck me when he said it to the host of that show, who was really good. He asked a lot of specific, great questions that bring out really enriching answers from his guests on his show. So I appreciate him for that. But I think there was another podcast that I saw him on, and he said that he was speaking to someone who was newly getting into their career, and they were in basically a career and a job that they did not like at all, but everything was laid out for them. They said that basically, in 20 years, I can just do whatever I have to do here at this job, and then I'll just retire, and then I'll get all my benefits. And he said, I couldn't believe how easy that rolled off that individual's tongue, because 20 years is a long time. And I think he said they were 25 at the time when they were talking to him. And he's like, 20 years, that is... Do you know how big of a gap of time that is for you to fully commit to something you already know is something that is you're not passionate about, is draining you, and you are literally acting like the most precious years of your life is expendable in that way. And so I think that can be true, right, in many different circumstances, whether it's you in a professional area getting into something that is not something that is going to challenge you, something you're passionate about, something that, where you can get up every morning and be inspired to go back again and again and again to either fine tune it to become the best or just continue to build. That can also be within, right, the relationship space. I can't tell you how many people that I come across where they'll be like, oh, we were in a relationship for 7 years or 10 years. And it's like, man, like those are precious years of your life, and our time, our energy, our faith are the most priceless currency here that we have. So how we direct, those resources and what we invest in is important, So I love that quote. And what I want to be great at is honestly, and I guess the best way I can probably I'm thinking about something that my husband said to me during one of the in-person sessions that I would have of my Interact coaching, because I have always said that sometimes the curse of being multi-talented is that sometimes you don't know where, to aim your focus. And I know for me, before in the past, when I was younger, I would feel like I was just aiming it everywhere, like really busy but not productive. And so, but I never wanted to forsake one talent over the other, because I'm like, well, God, if you gave me all these things, why can't I pour out all of them? But then you hear, right, jack of all trades, master of none. And so that quote always haunted me. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to be, a jack of all trades and just master of none. I don't know if I can be a master of all of these talents and skill sets that God has given me. And I remember my husband just said, Charlie, you don't have to worry about that. All you have to be is a master of obedience. And when he said, I was like, oh my goodness. When he said it, was almost like if you were holding weights, sometimes we go through life and we're literally carrying weights and they're invisible and we don't know. And then you either have a conversation or you do a certain action, and then it just like makes those weights just fall. And that his statement made that heavy weight fall for me, because I was like, that makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. It's like, in the Bible, it says, seek ye the kingdom of heaven first, and all the, other things shall be added unto you. And when he said that, it tied into a principle that I had learned a few years before him saying that, which was that, balance is not this thing where every area of your life is equal, right? Like each area you are equally investing in, in real time, because that would drive us crazy, first of all. And when you look at the pie of life and all the different areas that we exist, whether it's, romantic relationships, friendships, health, finance, recreation, whatever, all the areas of life that we exist in, there are areas that are more, right, that you want to focus on first, because if those areas are enriched, then it will pour into the other areas. And so when he said that, I said, man, that makes so much sense. If I'm a master of obedience, that means I just focus on what needs to be done in the now. And if I can do that to the best of my ability, then the next step, right, I can build upon that. So, it's like brick by brick. So I think that is what I want to be great at ultimately. I think how that would evidentially probably show up in my life would be in the priority areas, right? Which would be, I definitely want to be a good mother, a good, a great wife. And I really, when I think about singing, or even when I think about when I'm on here with you guys, I really want to be good at storytelling. I think there are a lot of phenomenal singers out there, and singers that I look up to. But I think when I open up my mouth, I really want to be a compelling storyteller that allows people to connect to, their soul, to love, to God, really, and just kind of pull them in. And probably, hopefully, what that one statement did for me when I said, my husband said that, and it made all the weightedness that I was putting on myself fall. I think that's what I want to do, that when I speak, people feel that, and can feel just a little bit lighter, more clearer, more bold, and being able to navigate this world filled with all of their capacity to love, so that they can do what they are purposed to do here. That's what I want to be great at, in a nutshell. I said it in a nutshell, like I said it like really small. No, I didn't. That was pretty long. I'm sorry, guys. All right, Monica said, obedience is our work. Amen. Outcomes are the Lord's work. Absolutely, for sure. So I appreciate that. So definitely, anybody else still pondering on it, thinking about it, let me know your thoughts. I think great quote and great question. But let's dive into tonight's topic. All right, so I titled tonight's topic, The New Look and Journey of Single Motherhood. Now, if anyone has come across my podcast, you guys know, and even if you listen to my songs, because I tell people, the coaching and the songs are not that far from each other because I am who I am, right? And I'm going to bring all of who I am everywhere I go. So I am all for and a fundamental activist of the nuclear family. Because I always say on this podcast that there is no great nation, there is no society, there's no community that is not built upon the fundamental building block of family, of marriage, of, right? That's how we continue to write legacy, and of course, not everybody has to get married to have a child, but many of society's issues, much of the trauma that many of us have either experienced or lived through can honestly be rooted back to, right, broken homes and broken families. And so those people who go through those things then enter the world, right? And those people make up the communities that we make up. They make up the society that we live in. And right, the society, we those people then choose how, right, we govern ourselves. So that's how deep the impact is. So I am an advocate for the nuclear family. I'm an advocate for that God is love, and the amount of wisdom that comes with that, right? Not just a fleeting emotion. And we talk about it at great length here. So what I find interesting right now, certain things that I'm looking into, is that the journey into single motherhood is different now, and I want to use Ebony K. Williams, and I know I don't know if many of you guys have heard of her. Maybe some of you might have heard of her or come across her. She was, well, first of all, she is an American lawyer. She is also the host of a show called The Griot, and many of you guys might have come in or know of her through she's had multiple viral videos, but one of the most recent ones was when she was talking to Ayana Van Zandt, and Ayana Van Zandt asked her, I believe Ayana Van Zandt was a guest on her show, and she asked her, would she marry a bus driver? And she adamantly said no, because, her, what she's achieved, her status, in her words, would say, no, it's not, that's not something I would drive unless he owns, right? Unless he owns the bus company that he's driving. And so I guess for her, she feels like she has already acquired a certain amount of net worth. And so she's not going to give someone else an opportunity who is living below that, right? Which is her every right, because she has the right to make that choice. But why I was bringing her up in regards to how I titled this podcast tonight was because she just recently posted a picture where she is becoming a mother for the first time. She's 40 years old, and she is pregnant with her first daughter. And she has been very candid on some of the shows that she has had interviews on, that she was taking that journey by herself. And in her words, she said it was by choice because she felt like there were no viable, right, candidates for her to start a family with. And so she made the decision to freeze her eggs at 34, and then she started to take IVF, right, and start giving herself the shots to have an embryo be implanted in her to basically become a mother that way. And first of all, it's like twofold when I hear about her process. One, because I've experienced family members going through that process who had infertility issues, and that is no walk in the park to do together in a marriage. It's especially for the woman, right? It takes a toll, not only on your body physically, There is potential to have miscarriages in between, and just all of the emotional, like just everything, the emotional, the spiritual, the physical toll that it can take or have on both partners, and then definitely the woman. So when I came across the interview where she said that she voluntarily chose to take this path, I just was like, man, first of all, she's very strong and courageous to venture into it. And I thought about the quote that I presented to you guys tonight, where it says, we were not created to tiptoe through life and then end up at death safely. And I would definitely think that the route that she's taking definitely, right, kind of has the essence of that quote kind of wrapped up into it, because clearly it's not the normative, right, way that when people envision, a woman having a child, that it's going to be that process. And so I definitely looked at it in that way. And I would like to also point out that she made, I guess, an effort, or it was intentional, that the sperm donor that she did use to be able to create her child, I guess there are certain waivers or things that the men can sign when they agree to be sperm donors, that if the child in the future wants to find out who their father is, then they can. So she was very open also in expressing that in her interview, that her child then would be able to find who their biological father is at a certain age, that they would allow it. And so I thought that was also good, because I'm a person who grew up without my father. He passed away when I was younger, and I did not really find that side of my family until, honestly, I was about probably like 21, maybe going on 22. I saw Antoine Fisher. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that movie, and there were so many different things that inspired me in that movie, and reflections that kind of looked like my life in certain ways, that it inspired me to want to find my dad. And well, he wasn't my husband at that time, but my husband helped me to find them. And I'm just thinking of the completeness, that I had in feeling like, okay, there was a missing part or a missing piece of me that now I could at least feel like, okay, I saw a picture, or these are people who are closely connected to him that now I can be connected to. They can share stories that I would have never known or heard. And, that's a part of you. And so, in hearing her talk about that, I was like, okay, well, that's good, that child would be able to at some point. Now, we don't know, right? Just because that person signs a waiver doesn't mean that they won't change through time and maybe not want to be found, and et cetera. That's a whole nother thing. But so that is the situation, or the person that I would kind of like to use to frame this conversation tonight. And I would love for any of the women who are on here, as well as the men, for the women's perspective. First of all, what are your thoughts about that? Would that, and she, well, let me finish that statement. Would that be something that you would do if you felt like you were, as many of us have heard, that you have that biological clock ticking, you feel like there's no partner in sight, and you really want to become a mother? Is that something that you as a woman would do to ensure, or at least, because, right, thankfully she was able, right now she's carrying her baby, and she posted beautiful, beautiful, it seemed like pregnancy photo shoot of her, you know, with her baby. And so thankfully she was able to conceive. When you're going through the process of IVF, there are many women who don't find success in it as well. But as a woman who's listening to this, is that something that you would do? Is that something you would venture into, or is this something like you're like, no? Would it be more of like, okay, maybe this is just not meant to be for me, you know? And of course, her situation is interesting because in her conversations in the past of her saying, well, I'm not going to marry the bus driver, like we don't know if she's had people who have presented opportunities to be with her, but because of either their status or, you know, whatever her standards are, that she said no, you know, which she, like, again, I said she has every right to do. But so this is literally like, I am just going to do it this way, in my way, because I feel like this is the best way, you know, because the candidates aren't there. And of course, that gives her the experience of going into motherhood. The other side of it, like I said, for me, when I thought about it, you know, it's like, oh, wow, she has a lot of strength, it's courageous. But at the same time, there was also a sadness about the situation, because just becoming a mother is one angle, but there's a whole nother aspect of it, right? That she will not be able to experience, at least right now. Maybe someone else would come into her life that she feels like is fit and possibly, you know, become a stepfather to the child. And, but nonetheless, when I was carrying my children, God has graced me, thankfully, to be able to become a mother, and just the support from my husband, the way he covered me through it. There's so much uncertainty in it, right? God, clearly our bodies, you know, depending on the situation, because some women aren't able to conceive, but those of us who have been able to, you know, I know for me, when I was pregnant, I just had to constantly remind myself, like, God created my body to do this. Like, it's okay, because it's really an uncontrollable situation. Like, you know, I exercised, I ate as well as I could, but it really is uncontrollable, right? And as a woman who is giving birth, you literally you're sacrificing your life to bring this life into the world. And so, you know, for me, it was a beautiful experience, because I wanted it helped me to deepen my trust in God and deepen my trust in my husband. And so that aspect of it, she's not going to experience that, you know, and that's a very layered experience and process. I want to take a moment and stop, because I see Monica has written some things in here. So I want to make sure that I take the time out to read those, and we'll get back to what I was saying. Monica said, my faith is in God to provide, and that includes a spouse and a child. I've been a single parent, and it's not an easy journey, not at all. My faith is in God to provide a spouse and child also. And she said, I also live my life from a biblical worldview. So that makes the difference. Yeah, as well. Very true. Absolutely. And I think that's, you know, it's like I think overall, when I think about the situation and the thing that she had presented, like I said, I think takes a lot of courage, one, to talk about it, because she doesn't have to. Two, the process that she had to go through is no walk in the park by any means. Just to be able to conceive, right? That has a lot of is daunting, right? The physical, what it does to your physical body, what it does to your emotions and things like that. But that's not even, right? That's only half of it, right? There's now that, okay, now this child is here, right? You have to take care of the child, and you know, as Monica said, and I have definitely was raised by my grandmother, who raised both my sister and I, and she was raising us, and she was single, right? Single grandmother at that. So I've definitely seen and experienced and talked to a lot of single mothers, and by no means is it, you know, something that you voluntarily sign up for, right? Certain things happen. Maybe you're in a relationship, you thought it was going to work out, it didn't, things like that. But in this particular circumstance, right, or situation, she is voluntarily making the sacrifice just so that she can experience motherhood in this way. And so it's going to hit one angle for her. And you know, guys, I talk about a lot on this podcast about selfishness. And, you know, I've written it in my book that, you know, love is all expansive, right? It's so encompassing of everything. And it's so expansive that, listen, it'll take a couple of forevers and a couple of lifetimes, even if that, to try to say we understand love in its fullest capacity, right? But it doesn't mean that you don't shoot and aim for the stars, right? And land on the moon, you'll be okay, right? And in regards to learning about love, because I always say God is love, right? If you don't know anything about it, you know, in my book, I say there's three things that you can guarantee. One is that God is love. Two is that love is not selfish. And three is that love is always here to serve. It comes to serve. And I use the term selfish, and I know there are many other people, definitely coaches, therapists, many people you can go to, like, selfishness is not a bad word. It's not a bad thing. But I always like to define selfishness as that when you're making a choice or when you're doing an action, it doesn't have the whole perspective in mind. And whether it's looking for at things from a bird's eye view, or like what I like to say from God's perspective, is taking in everything, right? And so in her making this decision, it is going to afford for her to experience motherhood, but all of the other things that come with it, all of the other gems that come, you know, in parenting, in a household that does have a mother and a father, all of those things, right, just because of the initiation of how this child was brought into the world, she's not going to have that. And of course, you can get that from, I'm a product of that, right? I am a product of someone who did not have her father growing up and did not, due to circumstance as well, have my mom growing up. But I always say, and I very freely give this information, whether it's on my podcast here or to anyone I speak to, I am a walking miracle. And the only reason I'm a walking miracle is because God filled the space. God was synonymous to my parents for me, right? But without that, I wouldn't be able to see the angels that God brought into my life to fill, right, certain voids or certain areas that where I can learn how to be a woman, where I can learn how to be a wife, where I can learn what a healthy relationship with, right, the opposite sex looks like. Without me making that first initial step of God becoming that for me, then it would have been very hard for me to even be able to acknowledge or see the angels that he's presenting to me in physical form here to then, right, allow me to grasp what they are offering to me, because I would be holding myself captive in wanting to receive that wisdom, receive that love from the two fundamental people that he, right, initially gave to be stewards over my life and the cultivation, right, of my wisdom and the cultivation of my understanding. If I'm locked in there, then I can't see the other angels that are offering me that information, right? Because what I'm supposed to appreciate, what I'm supposed to embrace is either the opportunity, the information, the wisdom, the love that I can get from anyone who chooses to put themselves in a positioning to hear from God and allow them to reflect the love of light, the love and light of God within them to me, right? But for many of us, sometimes we'll get locked into wanting to receive that love or wanting to receive it in a certain way, right? That's our strong-willed. That's our strong will that we will not let go of. And so when I think about her and her situation, right, that is the when you weigh it out, right? You know, like if I was able to have a conversation with her, that's what would probably be one of my first questions. Like, what do what do you think it is? Do you think this is, do you, feel like this was the only way that you can do this? Or do you feel like this was your kind of strong-willed decision, and whatever standards you put, do you feel like maybe it could have blocked out other potential people who could have, built a family and legacy with you, where you could have experienced holistically, in the infrastructure that God kind of created it to be in. So let me read, I have some more. Monica says, I think it's selfish to intentionally bring a child into the world without a father. Yeah, I would have to agree with you. I understand there can be father figures, absolutely, but that should come into play when the biological father chooses not to be a part, right? Yeah, no, I agree with you on that, Monica. I absolutely, and that's what I thought about, and I just can't imagine, because I'm sure for those of us who by God's grace, wanted to become mothers, right? Because not every woman wants to have a child. But if you are a woman who wanted to have children, and by God's grace you were able to, whether it was 1, 2, or 3, however many God has blessed you with, even in the desire and the wanting, I always tell younger women who are either just getting married or thinking about having children, and have the conversation. I say to them, aside from, choosing God, choosing Christ as my Lord and Savior, that's number one important decision. And then secondly, accepting the choice that my husband made in me, second most important decision of my life, then it's motherhood is the third, right? Most important and most life-changing and transformative decision and choice that I've made. And even in the desire to want to do that, those like marriage structures like marriage and structures like motherhood and fatherhood, man, they are entities of themselves. Like when you go into this process, it is a process that literally is created to strip or squeeze any type of selfishness that you have inside of you. And I know people I always hear people say it like this, like, taking time for yourself, self-care, that's selfish, and that's not a bad thing. But I don't view it as that, because like I said, selfishness is not taking into something as a whole or looking at something holistically. If I say as a woman or as a mother that I cannot pour out from an empty container, or I cannot run on fumes and exhaust and expect to make great impact, that is not me being selfish. Self-care is that person saying, this body that God gave me is the only medium I have in this lifetime to reflect his light and love to everyone else, to offer myself, my skill sets, my talents, my character. This body here has to be priority for me, right? My health has to be priority, because if my health is affected, it's going to affect how I navigate in every other area of my life. So that's a holistic understanding, right, of a fundamental process. That is not selfish. I'm not just thinking about myself when I take self-care or time for myself. I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my husband. I'm thinking about my children. I'm thinking about people who might come in here to this live and want to, right, be able to feel my presence, to hear what I'm saying, and have it resonate with them, right? I'm thinking about all of those things. So that's not selfish. That is a holistic thought, and it is a selfless act, because I am saying, okay, I need to pour into myself so that there is an overflow that then pours out to others, right? I'm not just taking a pit stop, ideally, right? Ideally, it's not going into the gas station when I'm on E now. And look, I'm hearing my husband, because he always says, I'm rebuking myself right now, and he's gonna laugh at me when I express this to him later on, because I do that with my car. So I'm just thinking to myself, I don't do that with myself, but I do it with my car. So anyway, when we're talking about, self-care and putting into yourself, it's ideally not supposed to be you go into the gas station, you're on E, and then you fill up so that you can now just go ahead and pour it out to everybody else. It really should be where you are on a routine, that you do things that fill you up and impact like every area that we exist in. It impacts you physically, it impacts you emotionally, it impacts you spiritually and mentally. And so you are on a routine of nurturing yourself, that now it becomes an overflow. And so now, whether you say something or do something or not, the people who come in your presence literally, right, are filled by that overflow. So that's really what it's supposed to be about. And in nothing, in any of that process, does it say selfishness, where it's only going to hit one angle or two angles and not think about the rest. And so for this situation with Ebony K. Williams, and again, I'm just using her because usually I come up with a relationship scenario to present to you guys that is totally comes out of my own creative mind. At least I believe so. I'm sure some people probably have gone through some of those things, but I usually come up with it. But when she, put that picture out on social media to express, her gratitude in being able to conceive and be pregnant with her daughter, I said this would be perfect to present as a conversation piece to you guys. And, she's not among, she's not all by herself. And that's why I say it's the new look and new journey of single motherhood, because there are plenty of women, especially, and it's more, right, if you are college educated, wealthy woman of a certain status. Because for those of you guys who might not know, these IVF treatments are not they are not cheap by any means. They are not. I think she said her process to even maybe because I know to freeze eggs and to freeze embryos, those prices are different, right? And so you're talking about thousands of dollars, right, for a process that you don't know, right, is even going to take. So you might have to do multiple rounds of it. So you're talking about $15,000, $20,000 per round, right? So the average person that does not have the finances to be able to do that. So as she has articulated it in an interview before, it's a rich ladies, right? Rich ladies process of going about becoming a mother. And I guess the current culture, right, is where you have women are becoming more educated, women are entering, right, collegiate world and spaces a lot of times more than their counterparts, the men. And then when we get into these spaces, the research is showing that, right, we are more, women like to date up. They like to marry up. They don't necessarily like to, where you might find a wealthy man who will date a woman that does not have, is not equal in financial wealth or resources in that way, and he won't have any problem, right? Because that's not of value to him. So if that continues to happen and we continue to grow in that way, how many more women who desire to be mothers are going to take the route that she has taken, and then that's going to present the same problem with a new process, right? The same problem of broken homes, the same problem of those children who, like myself, right, who are affected by, knowing that there's a piece of them that they're desiring to understand, that there are certain genetics and certain things. Because even when I found my father's family, as I heard stories, as I, they let me know how he was, a certain ages and stages in his life, and even in his short life, because my father passed away when he was 27, so he was young. But as I was hearing those stories, it was like, oh my goodness, he didn't raise me. I didn't grow up in a household where it could be environmental learning that I learned some of these things from him. But these things were literally, there are certain characteristics, certain natures that he has that are literally already downloaded inside of me. And if those are good characteristics, that you deem to be good, then it's great. It's like, yeah. And then maybe if there are some tendencies that you're like, oh no, that's not going to work for me. It's not going to be beneficial, and then you have to kind of work it out. So I guess it could be looked at positive or in a negative way. I know for me, growing up, and a part of what makes me always feel like my father is with me is understanding that even though in his physical presence he's absent, I hold his legacy, right? Because I am his legacy. I carry that on. So those, right, his genes are literally living and running through me. And so that gave me some, relief, some not feeling, it allowed me not to feel disconnected in understanding that his blood, and his genetics flow through me. So I'll always have him with me in that way. So I was able to kind of come to reality, right, with the deck of cards that life had given me in that way. But I don't, that was by circumstance, right? It wasn't intentional. He wanted to be in my life. It's just the situation, the circumstance of how, right, between the relationship between him and my mom, and the things that have happened, that it turned out in that way. But he didn't intentionally set out to do that. So what happens now when we have a world where we're intentionally doing this just so that we can get what we want, And listen, I am not only an advocate for the nuclear family, but I am most definitely an advocate in saying that the greatest positions that we can have here is motherhood and fatherhood. Because again, no matter who you look to, we all had to, none of us could come into this world without two people coming together, whether it was led and driven by strong emotions and not necessarily family planning and thought out. Those two people had to come together, and they become your mother and father. And depending on what your relationship dynamics is with them and how that shapes your, perspective on life. And, all of us have to go through the process, right, of kind of peeling back the layers to see whatever our conditioned learning is, whatever our environmental learning was, what we took in, and strip back those layers to really see who we are, right? And then live our life based on who we truly were purposed to be in God versus the circumstances or the experiences, that our life had. We don't want to go through life just based on that. Now, I'm not saying to not glean from your experiences, but your experiences are not who you are. You want to live life unapologetically being who you are, and who you were created to be in God. But there's none of us, right, that go through this life that won't have to kind of go through that process. Or at least let me say it like this, because not everybody is willing to go through, right? Because it's sometimes, depending on what you've been through, it's not it's challenging. It's to face those things, or those truths. So, but I do believe that everybody presented with the opportunity, right? That we will have life cycles of opportunities that will provide us, an opportunity to say yes to learning the lesson, yes to transforming into, our most optimal selves at each stage and, stage and season of our life. And depending on if we take those opportunities or not is going to depend on how we, right, navigate in this world and how we serve in the world, and what type of communities and what type of government is created. So it's important, it's important. And I think when the root of the action and the choice is selfishness, even though you are taking on a role that takes so much selflessness, to do it, it's easy to kind of overlook that the root of the decision is selfishness, though, right? That it's not taking into consideration all of the factors, I'm praying and I hope, and because I'm sure that maybe there are some people who are listening to this or who will catch the replay and say, well, and maybe even mothers now, in relationships. I've talked to many different women who might have been in a stage where they feel like they are single mother or single wife, even though they're married, because they feel like maybe the domestic household duties are all on them, and really it's the marriage is not in a great space. So right, there's no infrastructure or order in the marriage to gain strength from each other, right? And becoming a mother, any mother on here who's listening, or even father, knows that it can be a very all-consuming, right, process where you literally, the mother and father have to convene and connect and make sure that they are saying we came first, we brought this child into the world. So we have to make sure that we are first and the children are secondary because they came here from us. And all throughout the process, doesn't matter how many parents I speak to, that's what it usually is. It's like, okay, we're trying to figure out, or make sure that the children are not like taking over our lives and consuming us so much that we are not taking time to connect with each other, taking time to gain strength from each other. So there are people who might say, well, as long as she has a good support system, as long as she has women in her community that will help her out, she'll be fine. But it's not true, because we need both, right? We need to know both masculine energy and feminine energy. And there is no community of women that can replace the presence of the father in that child's life, that can teach that child, the dynamics of a relationship between a young girl and her father, and what that can afford for her or allow her to be able to enter into relationship spaces differently. And there's no community of women or support group that she can have, and even maybe the uncles, maybe she'll have a community of men, uncles and grandfathers and things like that. They will be there to provide her, right? The male presence. But there will never be, let me say it like this. She will never be able to negate telling her daughter, that, listen, I decided to have you this way because I didn't feel like there were enough men who were in my standard, basically. Whether it was based on, and especially if it's just based on heavily on status, and it wasn't that, okay, let me see the character of this person. Let me see maybe if they have some spiritual aptitude. Let me see their emotional capacity. It was like, okay, no, I've created this and I've done this and I've climbed the heights of success, and so therefore I can't deal with someone who who I have deemed to be, unsuccessful, and it's only in one area. So, it's gonna have to have that conversation. Like, okay, this is the way that I decided to have you come in the world, and yeah, you can meet this person that donated, right? That was the sperm donor that allowed you to come into this world at a certain point in time. But there's so much that's missed in between. I have 2 daughters, and I always am like in awe, just like, it's like, and coming from somebody who didn't grow up with their father, right? And because I knew my father couldn't physically be there because he died when I was younger, it's like you kind of feel like out of sight, out of mind in a way, meaning like you don't know what you're missing because you never had it, right? So even if I heard other girls in my school or things like that tell me about their things that they did with their father, it was like, okay, I don't really know what all of that entails, so it's okay. Like, I'm all right, But now, when I become a mother and I see how my husband is with, my daughters, I'm like, wow. It's like I'm constantly saying to God, like, thankfully, I can experience how it would have been, at least ideally, right? Because I don't know what if my relationship would have resembled or reflected how my husband's relationship is with his own daughters. But in my head, ideally, if it was like that, I can get to vicariously kind of live through them in that way. Like, wow, this is great. Like, in having conversations or where he's teaching them, about the world or teaching them about understanding men or understanding themselves, or even have conversations that help them know their worth, and or just different things, like just simple things, taking them for a walk or ice cream, all of those things. Like, I'm seeing the value of his presence in their life. And I think not just her singular situation, because like I said, I'm going to say it again, because I don't want anyone to say, I'm bringing her up to kind of like, throw her under the bus. No pun intended. No pun intended, because her video went viral about not dating a bus driver. But I'm just using her as a singular example. But I think the root of why I have an issue with this, and why I think that it wouldn't be beneficial, and why I'm hoping, even though culture is stating otherwise, that other women in certain areas and status of life will not, hoping they won't follow suit and do this, is that I think at the core of it is the disregarding of the importance of the father in the family. And I think that can only have astronomical, fundamental negative effects, not only on the singular individual child or children that come thereafter, but just as a society as a whole. That because right in the process, she needs the sperm donor. So that alone should say, even though you're doing this by yourself, you could not do this by yourself. You needed to have the sperm of a man be able to allow you to even give you the opportunity to conceive. And that should tell us how important it is for both, right, the father and the mother, to begin the process and be there throughout the process. And when we have a new look and a new journey of single motherhood, where we have women who are, maybe saying, listen, I don't want my window of time to close. I get it. I don't want my window of time to close. So I got to do what I got to do and become a mother by any means necessary, or by my own means necessary, right? However, the fact that, again, you need that man to be able to become a mother. I don't think that it should disregard, right? I think that if we continue in that way, it's just going to unfortunately create a false mentality that disregards the honoring of fatherhood, or the honoring of the nuclear family and the necessity of it. I guess maybe it's a more obvious kind of brash, stepping into literally creating broken families loudly, and intentionally. Of course it happens, right? Where people who you're not necessarily, like I said, things happen and people aren't right? Family planning is not something that is talked about enough, is not intentional in many people, right? Even if you're married, sometimes it's not, right? It's like, oh, oops, it just happened. You know what I mean? But at least you have the environment where you guys have both vowed and you're in it. But right, it's not something that people talk about all the time, even though we should, right? Even though we should, and it's necessary. But I see some new faces in here. Andrea, Brooklyn, Dundada. Oh my goodness, how are you? Emily, I am Sims. How are you? Oh my goodness, how you doing? Thank you guys for all coming in. And Lady Chameleon, how are you guys doing? We are talking about, I'm sure you saw the topic. Maybe you didn't see the topic when you came in. But tonight's topic is, I titled it The New Look and Journey of Single Motherhood. And I'm using the example of Ebony K. Williams, because this is my Sunday relationship scenario Sundays, where I usually put out a relationship scenario and you guys get to be the coach and therapist. And, you know, we get to talk about some principles, extract some strategies by dealing with other people's circumstances and issues. So instead of me coming up and pulling it out of my own head, I am talking about Ebony K. Williams. For those of you who just came in, she is an American attorney. I believe she is of African American descent. She is also the host of The Griot, and she recently just went viral. Well, recent for my recent, because I'm not on the main topics whenever they come out hot off the press. I believe it was last year sometime that she went viral she was talking to Ayana Van Zant in an interview where she said, Ayana Van Zant asked her, would she marry a bus driver? Because she was talking about how, there's no viable men out there that are of her status who are thinking about marriage, who are interested, etc. And so Ayana Van Zant asked her, would you marry a bus driver? And she said no, unless he owned the bus company that he was driving. So I presented her because she just recently, which I do believe this was recent, maybe like last week or a week before that, posted a picture on social media. She has been open about her choosing to go into motherhood by herself as a single mother. And she started taking IVF, which is, freezing her eggs. And then she got an embryo implanted and she found success. She's pregnant with her first daughter, her first child. And so we're talking about it, and I titled it The New Look and Journey of Single Motherhood because most single mothers that I speak to did not intentionally want it to pan out that way. Maybe they were in relationships, the relationships didn't work, and then, right, that thrust them into single motherhood. But this is new. This is a new look where a lot of women of high status, high earning women in a certain class are now to not let their window, right, their biological clock window completely close, are now looking into the options of becoming mothers this way. And so I asked the women who are in here, what are your thoughts about that? Do you think that this, one, would you do it? If you felt like the men that you're meeting are not meeting your status, or meeting your standards. And so you want to become a mother, so you will become it this way and literally voluntarily go into single motherhood so that you can experience being a mother, even if it means that child growing up not knowing their father through the process. And secondly, men, I would love for you to let me know what your thoughts are on this. What do you think about it? Do you think like, oh, well, yeah, understandably so. She want to have a child, let her have a child the way that she wants to. Or do you think, if you met a woman like this, would you think like, okay, well, she's a go-getter, she's courageous. Would it be something that would be appealing to you, or do you think that is completely selfish? So I guess that would be the main question tonight in regards to this scenario. Do you think a woman getting a sperm donor, feeling like the men that she's meeting are not in her class or meeting her standards or viable because of those two things, that her intentionally going into single motherhood this way is a selfish act? Or do you think, a selfish act that kind of perpetuate broken families? Or do you think like, no, it's honorable because she is willing to experience motherhood in this way by any means necessary, which is a selfless act all in itself. So that's what we're talking about tonight. Let me know what your thoughts are on it. Weigh in basically. My beautiful cousin Shireen, I love you. I love you. Love you. Thank you for popping in. We just celebrated my cousin's beautiful daughter, Sweet 16. I got to see all my beautiful family yesterday, and it was a great time. So, yeah, so that's what we're talking about tonight, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are, And you know what I find interesting? And you guys can let me know if there's any, women of other, right? Because like I said, Ebony K. Williams is, as far as I know, African American descent. I'm wondering if you think, right, would white women, Spanish women, would this be a route that they would take? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's, and of course, like I said, I have to look into it more. I haven't really heard of, or seen other women of other cultures coming up and doing this. And I think it's a important conversation, right? Because we've had conversations in the past where they talk about, Black women and where they stand when as far as like relationships wise and, men and the way they view, us. And so I think that definitely can be a part of the conversation. I remember, you guys let me know. I'm thinking of Money Long's song "Made for You," that everybody was like at one point. I don't know if they're still doing it. It was TikTok trend and old things like that. And so I love I really like the song. And I then watched the video, and so I was thinking that it was gonna be like like a typical kind of like love video. She found somebody, and he's made for her. you know but then I watched the video and saw, which I thought, it was a nice little twist. Definitely shocked me. But she was making the man, like she had to make a, like AI, like I don't know. She was making like a robot man. And I was like, it totally made me think of the song in a different way. I was not feeling it. I was like, why? And then she's like, she's a Black woman. So I'm like, okay, so we out here just, it has gotten this bad that we out here making men robots to be with. And now we are thrusting ourselves into single motherhood because of the state. You know what I mean? Like it saddened me, And so I'm just thinking that coupled with this is like, what is going on, right? Emily says, personally, I wouldn't use IVS, but if the mother thinks that she's not going to find a good man and she's getting older, I support it. Okay, so Emily said, personally, no, she wouldn't do that. But if the mother feels like she's getting older, biological clock is ticking, she would support her doing it. Okay. Hey, CW, how are you? Thank you for the podcast. We are talking about the new look and journey of single motherhood. The scenario that I put out tonight was not one that I imaginarily came up with. We are talking about Ebony K. Williams and how she has just posted to the world on social media that she is pregnant with her first daughter through IVF, because she felt like she has been very open and vocal about her feeling that she's not meeting men who are viable, who are a person basically that she would feel would be a proper husband for her. So she is now 40 and she wanted to have a child. So she, basically froze her eggs, went through the process of IVF, and she's pregnant with her first daughter. So what we're talking about tonight is, do you think that is like a selfish act that perpetuates the broken family type of dynamic? Or do you think that's a selfless, act on her part, because motherhood in itself is selfless? And clearly the process that she went through was by no means a walk in the park. It took a lot just to conceive, right? That one child. So that's what we're talking about. So feel free to weigh in. First, Shireen said, "I'm late coming, but if I may, there was an old series called Murphy Brown, and she decided right on that she was going to be a single mom." Okay, she was a single white woman. Okay, I think she got a sperm donor and had her child. I agree with Emily. Okay. There are many downsides, though, like you can end up being pregnant with multiple babies. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, IVF is, yeah, not just that, multiple babies, but like I said, I've had, whether it was friends or people in our family that have went through that, and it's no, like I said, I keep on saying, there's no walk in the park, because it's really not. It's you can experience miscarriages and things like that, and so it is emotionally and physically and spiritually a lot. A lot for both, especially, like I said, just for people who have the mother and the father, right? If it's a husband and wife that are both going through it is daunting for both of them. And so in introducing this to you guys, and her saying that she's doing it on her own, she was giving herself the shots, the IVF shots, like, that takes a certain amount of strength and strong-willed, to be able to do that. You have to have a certain amount of strong will to even go through that process. And I think, right, that's just what Emily presents, and what I just presented is just the process, right, of conceiving, or the process of going through a round of IVF. But then it's what comes after too, right? It's what comes after. And I think I can't, and you guys can let me know. Name me one person that you might have spoken to who came from a household where either the mother or the father was absent, that said it was like a breeze, like they didn't go through anything, or they did not have to grow up confronting certain things that, were missing in their life. And don't get me wrong, because I know there's the people out there that are probably saying it right now, whether they listen to the replay or on right now with me saying, well, you can have those same things when you have both parents. And I get that, right? I'm not talking about a situation where you have a mother and father and they're both toxic, right? And they're clearly, that toxicity is going to get to the child. We're talking about having a healthy, relationship, having a healthy example as a father, having a healthy example as a mother. And it's sad, unfortunately, that's not depending on, the groups that we're talking to, or the cultures or the ethnicities that we're looking into. Sometimes it's not seen a lot. So your first thought is not to go there, but the truth is that the best environment for a child to grow in is when there is a healthy dynamic between a father and a mother. There's research, there's statistics about what, right, happens to the child, how they grow up, how they enter into the world. And so there's really no way of getting around that. So that's why I say, when I think about her, and like I said, she's just one singular person, but she, in the dynamic and the way that the world and the culture, especially in American culture, right, it's not everywhere, where you have the dynamic of women who are going to college, getting not just one degree BA, but their masters, their PhDs, and venturing out into professional worlds and industries. And the higher they go, right, and then there is a disconnect, because they're not necessarily going to go for men who they feel have a lower status than them, right? And this is not, because I know a lot of people, where they might have seen her video, because I had said to everyone that she went viral like last year when she was talking to Ayana Van Zandt. She said, I'm not going to marry a bus driver unless he owns the bus, right? And a lot of people were downing her, like, you're missing out, and it's about character, it's not about what the man does and things like that. But I think for women, it's no difference than like women who tend to look for taller men, right? You'll hear a lot of women, if you ask them what is their type or what their preference is, oftentimes they'll say taller men, right? And it's not, and and a lot of people will be like, man, the short men, they're getting a hard time, like they're not giving them a chance and things like that. It's really just like an innate type of thing inside of the woman, that once she sees a taller man or a bigger man, she thinks that is security. She thinks he's going to keep me safe. He's able to protect me. He's able to, right? You know what I mean? It's not even a thing where she's trying to necessarily belittle a man who is not of a certain height. It's no difference from a man who sees a woman, her beauty and her youthfulness, or even her curves. All of those for him and innately says, okay, reproduction, right? She is ripe and good for reproduction. Like I have a friend who he's married now, but I remember as he was going through the process of getting married, he called me and he said, man, Sharla, like, he's describing to a young woman that he was interested in, and he was in a certain age category. And he was like, I would love to marry the women who are in my age category, but I want to have children. And, he was kind of in, in a rock and a hard place, I guess you can say, because he was like, these younger women that I'm meeting, they're not really ready, to settle down and have children. And the older women are, but the chances of them being able to have multiple children with me, if I want to have a certain amount of children, is slim. So I'm kind of stuck, but he in no way was just trying to dismiss certain women. It's just that certain things, certain attributes literally innately bring out something inside of us, right? So just like when the man sees a woman who is youthful or has a curvaceous body, it screams reproduction for him, right? It's not even, now I get it, in society with the BBLs and all kind of things that are going on right now, yeah, right? It's gone overboard, but just naturally in nature, that's what it triggers inside of them. No difference from when a woman sees a tall man, she thinks he's going to be able to protect me. There's a certain security that comes with it. And I think that also translates when you have women who are in a certain status of life and says, well, I don't really want to date down. I want to date up because I'm looking for that man to lead in a certain area, right? So I get that, I totally get that. But if our culture continues to go like that, where women are venturing and climbing, right, the heights of education and the heights of professionalism in whatever industries that they take on, and now they're not looking, right? There will be a whole, what's the word I'm looking for? There will be many men that will be overlooked because of that, right? And if now it's, okay, well, I don't necessarily need you to be a father. I can just take your sperm and I can just become a mother in that way. And I can create my family. And like I said, to me, I just feel like that is more of a selfish act because it is thinking about one perspective and one angle. It is forsaking all of the other, right? Infrastructure, order, all of the beautiful gems and principles that come out of creating a family, right? The nuclear family in that way. And here's the thing, right? Not just for the child, but also for that woman. So there's a part of me that when I think about, it's like I'm happy for her that she had, she was able to conceive, and now she gets to experience the process of motherhood. But then there's a part of me that's sad that I'm like, man, but she will not experience, the strength that comes from her husband covering her through that whole process. And I think we live in a world and in a culture that oftentimes when we think about, marriages, and then when you put children into play, there it becomes a disconnect, right? Like the children take precedence over the marriage. And it's not really supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be, right, the wife gets strength from her husband, and vice versa. And then that strength overflows to the children. And so in this particular scenario with Ebony K. Williams and maybe other women who are also, right, going to seek to have children in this way and voluntarily thrust themselves into single motherhood just for the sake of saying, I became a mother, now disregard the whole, right, process of experiencing that. And, and like I said, I think my main core reasoning of why that I think it's more of a selfish act and I don't think that it's a good thing is because if that continues, what the underlying message is that the presence of a father is not needed. Not for the woman and not for the child. And I'm here to tell you that is far from the truth as possible, and it's going to further divide. And here's the thing, and I'm researching it now on the absence of a father and how that affects the mental health of a mother, right? And for many single mothers, where you're trying to do everything, you're trying to fill shoes that you can't fill, even as much as you try. And even for many of us who didn't conceive in this way, and have your children, right? And you have family members, life's, life just happens, and even the people that you have in your family, because life gets so busy, even though they're there, sometimes you might not even feel, right, the support that you want to feel or want to have, and that's with just a normative, right, unfolding of motherhood and fatherhood. Now imagine just like you voluntarily threw yourself into single motherhood. Can you imagine like the whole processing of it all, right now she's pregnant and I'm hoping, thankfully, hopefully she'll have someone there with her when she's giving birth and things like that. But like I said, there's no way to replace the necessity of a father in a child's life and the necessity of the male presence in our world, much less, right, in a marital relational sense. I'm going to do a podcast in the very near future in where I had a thought. It was like, how can men be so much in demand, right? Because men outnumber us, right? Women all across the board. You go to as many different countries as you want to look, right? How can they be so in demand yet in the current culture that we're in, right? Not everywhere, but definitely in American culture. And it starts to penetrate other countries too that you would not necessarily, right, see where they are in demand, but right now very much kind of disregarded and disrespected in that way, right? Especially when we're talking about in the relationship space and especially when you're talking about the development of the family. And so I definitely want to do a future podcast on that. And, I think fundamentally it's because no matter what we say, no matter how many eloquent, and especially if you've ever heard Ebony K. Williams speak, I relate to her because my family has always said, Sharla, when they didn't know what I was going to be. They said, you should be a lawyer because of just the way that I spoke, like I can, and I'm not trying to, it just was a natural gift, right? Where it was like, addendum here, you spoke, I could literally, and she's very much like that. Like if you're speaking to her, you have to come correct, right? And she's a lawyer, so it makes sense. Like be prepared to defend your position, right? So she articulates it, both vulnerably, by the way, too, as well as masterfully when she articulates it. But at the end of the day, right, no matter what, you need the sperm to create this child. And that sperm came from a man, right? Who said, okay, I willingly give this to someone who wants to become a mother, which is also, honorable thing, I think. But at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to negate whatever processes that young girl or that little child is going to have to go through because of whatever she felt like she was without. And mind you, this is a successful woman, so I doubt that she would go without, many things when it comes to material things or the type of lifestyle that she will live. But we all know, right? That's where you hear, I think it was a golfer just maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I forget his name, who just committed suicide. Wealthy man of great status. The wealth, the resources, however you want to name it, will not replace whatever process that we have to go through here to get to a sense of wholeness and completeness and fulfillment and purpose. So, miss me really on that argument that this lifestyle that she can offer her is going to, right, replace what she's going to have to, right, really deal with. And something that is a part of her, a deep part of her that she won't really know, or understand, or she'll feel it's missing. And then take it, like I said, for me, I found my father's family, like I said, when I was 21. My husband helped me, and I'll tell you guys the story because it's a crazy, miraculous story, but I want to read some of the comments from the people coming in. Emily said, IVS could also result in an ectopic pregnancy, ovarian torsion, and placenta previa, and more. It can also increase levels of depression and anxiety for the mother. Absolutely. That's why I said when she was open and vulnerable to say that she was voluntarily going into single motherhood this way, I just automatically was like, man, this woman is a warrior. Because like I said, I've experienced where both the husband and wife were in it together and saw how taxing it was on for their relationship, for the body of the woman. It's like unthinkable and unimaginable that she can have that much strength to do that. Clearly, this is something that she wants to experience, and will experience it how by any means necessary, honestly, right? But that's just the beginning, right? There's anybody on here who has children knows all the things that you go through, in the process, how it transforms you, how uncontrollable it is, your thoughts of hoping that they'll be protected and that nothing won't happen to them, all of the things that come along with it, that most definitely can affect your mental health. It's not easy. It's not easy. So like I said, I don't think in whatever natural unfolding that single motherhood happens, and I don't think anyone, most people, I say anyone, most people will not voluntarily say this is the ideal dynamic that I want to raise my child in. Am I going to do it if I find myself in the situation? Absolutely. I met my grandmother was a single grandmother, and I thank God for her. She made me who I am, today. And she did the best that she could, and she, tried to provide in certain areas and resources that she couldn't provide. She, whether it was sending me to church or, making me go to certain people to fill certain areas that she just couldn't, and they do a great job. There's a lot of people who, grow into be great people and beautiful people that are raised by single mothers. But then there are also, right, hard statistics too that show what happens, right? It's especially, particularly to young boys and young men who grow up into single mother households that we can't just disregard, So, yeah, but I appreciate all of those things that you wrote, Emily. First, Shireen says, I don't really know who this Williams woman is, but maybe she's blocking her own blessings. Perhaps she's looking for a type of man within a certain ethnicity. Yeah, absolutely, Shireen. And, maybe next time I come on, I'll show you guys a video of her. I'm sure you've probably seen her because, like I said, she went viral over that clip of her and talking to Ayana Von Zant saying, I'm not going to marry a bus driver ever unless he owns the bus, right? So I had said that in the, somewhere early on in the podcast that, she most definitely could be blocking her own blessings. And I think if that's the case, and when we do that, you automatically kind of thrust yourself into a situation when you do things by your own will, right? When you do your things by your own will and you're not thinking holistically or collectively, you automatically put yourself in a process where you're going to give yourself some unnecessary pain and heartache. You automatically are going to do that. And I know I've been a person where we all, right? Like there's destined experiences, I do believe, that are here and necessary things that you need to go through to build who you are, right? I don't think any of us is going to leave this world without experiencing some kind of, right, pain, heartache, suffering, loss, right? Because everybody doesn't matter if you're experiencing something good or you love someone. This is a process that always has an end to it. So you're going to feel lost somewhere, somehow, right? So I always said to God, like, I just want the necessary, right? just give me the necessary process. I don't want the extra. You know how you have the food with extra additives, you want the organic experience. Give me the organic experience of life. Like the lessons that you have for me, just give me that and help me to make choices and decisions where I'm not adding the extra additives. I'm not adding the extra suffering and heartache and pain due to decisions and choices that I make that are out of selfishness or my own stubborn will or, that are not guided by your wisdom or your truth. Help me, save me so that I won't do that because I don't want it. The natural, the natural storms of life are enough. They're enough for me to get it, and learn from. I don't need the extra. Emily says, was the wealthy man that committed suicide conceived in IVF? I don't know. I would rather the mother adopt a child. Really? Well, Emily, that seems like you've changed your... It seems like you've changed your decision now. I think the last time Emily changed her decision too. But I don't know. I know his mother and father did put out a blurb, just experiencing, just telling people that, this is kind of the worst thing, right? That a parent can go through is to bury their child because you think the opposite, like, your child's going to bury you, but then also to lose your child from them taking their own life, right? So now it's unpredictable, a shocking death, right? And have when a person leaves the earth in that way, you have more questions than you have answers, right? And so I think that's what they put in their what they put out to the press was like, okay, we not only have to go through this great pain and suffering just within our intimate space between us as his parents, but now we also now have to share this pain with the world because he was well known. And, I think what they said was, thank God we know he was loved clearly by you guys. So I don't know how he was conceived, but someone getting to a point of wanting to take their own life, you usually get to a point where it's like whatever it is, it's unbearable, and you don't want to do this process of life anymore. So I don't know. I don't know how he was conceived, but I think that is a good example of right how complex and how challenging life can be and starting a family can be, right? Because he had both his mother and father, and of course I don't know his backstory. I don't know what happened to him as a child. I don't know what it was, but it's showing you, right? At least they're coming together. I don't know if he was adopted. I have no idea, right? How how they came to be his parents and him their child. But it's to show you how complex and challenging, right? It can be just to raise a family and to raise a child and hope and pray for the best, and that you're trying to instill the best that you can in them with just the mother and the father there together, right? That's a nuclear family, and this still was the outcome, right? And certain things that happen in life, it's like the person who does everything right. They eat all the right foods and drink all the water and exercise, but they still end up with some kind of ailment or illness, or disease. And you're like, why? Certain questions we can't answer, in life. Some certain questions are just left up to God's jurisdiction and understanding. But that doesn't mean that we don't, right? Just because we know that, that is a situation that can occur, do we as people say, well, I'm not going to drink water then? Why should I? Or I'm not going to eat healthy then? Why should I? I'm not going to exercise then? Why should I? Because there's a possibility that this can occur. That's kind of like how the situation with Ebony K. Williams feels to me. It's like, oh, well, this can happen with a nuclear family anyway, so I'm just going to have my own child this way, and especially if it is what Emily said, or even what Shireen said about blocking your own blessings, or feeling like due to someone's status that is not equal to yours, that now I'm just going to have this child because I want this child and I want to experience motherhood, and that's it. Period. Point blank. I'm not missing this window, and then here's the thing, like maybe some other women who might have missed that window, or who might be in a scenario like her right now, they might say, well, shoot, if I would have did that, I would have had my child. And I would have experienced it. And, all would have been wow. So, it's layered, right? It's a layered topic. You can look at it from many different angles. And that's why I kind of try to, of course, present it in many different ways, but also go back to what I feel would be the most impactful in like a fundamental way, that at the end of the day, I would not want to, encourage, encourage other women to do this, because there's no way to really negate the importance of giving a child the most optimal and beneficial environment to thrive in. we don't want to start out at a negative. We don't want to intentionally start out at a negative and then hope that that negative increases to a positive based on your work ethic or based on what you feel like you can provide, because nothing that she can provide is going to replace the fundamental kind of yearning that a child has for their father, right? Or their mother, because those are the two people that created them. So I think is great to kind of talk about, and it's great to look at, right? Because this is more of a macro, right, situation and issue as far as how it can be echoed in our communities or how it can be echoed in society. But I think it's a great way to look at all of the different choices that we make, you know, and a good way to look at what true selfishness is versus selflessness, you know, because every seed, there's a Bible scripture that comes to mind. It says every seed reproduces after its own kind. So the thing that fuels your decisions or the root, you know, cause of your actions then will reproduce, right, in the very process that you're in. Even if you feel like what you're reaching for is a higher, right, a higher, what's the word I'm looking for? A higher type of mentality or, you know, a higher state of living or a way of being. If you enter into that selfishly, you don't really even get to experience that higher mentality or higher state of being that you're reaching for. You know, it's kind of like the best way I can put it is like someone who's selfishly in a relationship, right? They're selfishly there to want the person to be or do whatever it is that they want them to do, right? It's not necessarily I'm in this relationship to engage with you, to learn you, to experience you, who you truly are authentically. No, I really just want you to be a placeholder to kind of help, right? Help me get to certain places that I want to be or experience certain things I want to experience. It's not necessarily a holistic type of organic, you know, type of relationship that is unfolding here. You're just here to you know, basically facilitate my will and my wants and my desires, right? That's selfish. Even though, let's say in that relationship, those people create children or those people create, you know, other things, you know, whether it's businesses or go on vacations or whatever have you. If that person, their fuel is selfishness and it's not really holistic for, you know, to really see when they're blended together what their union will birth or create, then even though they're in this relationship, that they're not going to, it's going to be constant lack of fulfillment. Even if that person has desires that are being met in the relationship, they still won't be fulfilled. Going back to the person that we talked about who just committed suicide, there's a lot of wealthy people who commit suicide, you know, and you would think like, how? This person has everything, you know, like the homes, the vacations, they can literally get whatever they want. It's no difference from the relationship that I just said, where someone who is fueled by their own selfishness, even if they get those things, they will have ever wanting. They will forever be a taker. They will always have to find something else to give them a glimpse of happiness. And they will continue to try to do that to try to create fulfillment, but you can't create fulfillment from happiness. Life doesn't work like that, right? Like we had a podcast maybe about a couple of weeks ago where I asked the people, would you rather choose, if you had to choose between the two, would you choose happiness or fulfillment? And in the podcast, I said, really, when you have fulfillment, it allows you to maximize and wholeheartedly embrace the moments in life where happiness comes to you. But a person trying to fulfill, or get their desires met, if there's no undergirding of real true fulfillment that are based, right? How do we get, somebody listening to this might say, how do you get fulfillment, or how you define it? And the first place that you want to start with getting fulfillment is truth. I say it all the time on this podcast. There's no trusting without it be based on truth, fundamental truth, not your opinions. A lot of people are running around stating their opinions and their feelings and their emotions, and they're saying that their feelings and emotions are truth. No, that's not it. Truth is something fundamental that when you go in other areas of life, it holds its weight. It is still constant. So, for instance, in this example of Ebony K. Williams, she is pregnant with her first child, right? And she is going to go, as she has termed it, into her journey of single motherhood. Could she have that child without the donation of sperm from a man? No, because it is a fundamental truth and a fundamental principle that if you want to have a child enter this world, you are going to need the sperm from a man, and that sperm is going to have to meet an egg from a woman, right? So whether you want to feel differently about it, that's okay, but it is still a fundamental truth, right? So one way to find fulfillment is to, one, align yourself with the truth, the things that, when you're developing your relationships, when you're developing or trying to see or understand or process or navigate your next move or your next step, that it is being guided wholesomely by the truth, right? Which I like to call the wisdom of God, right? That it's being guided by that. Because if not, then the things that you are creating will easily be crippled, will easily destroy you, because we are selfish people. We tend to have selfish tendencies, right? I'm not excluded from it, right? We do. We are wired for self-preservation, right? To guard ourselves, to protect ourselves. That's what we're wired for. And it's hard when we thrust ourselves into other relationships with people, whether they be friendships, whether they be romantic and marital relationships, because that combats our self-preservation. It combats our ego. It calls for us to relinquish our selfishness to get in a position to serve another human being, whether that's fatherhood, motherhood, wife, being a husband, being an authentic friend, who will tell the truth and not forsake the truth just to appease your friends, condition or their state, right? It's all around. So that's, I think, one of the first steps of being able to find fulfillment, because the truth grounds you, and it grounds you to be able to trust in this life. And if you can trust in this life, the place where the trust will emanate from first, if you have aligned with the truth, is that you will be trusting of your, right, like the as I like to call it, the loving nudges that God gives you, or the things that you hear inside of you. Sometimes we dismiss them so way too many times. We dismiss the truth when it comes to us. I have a saying that I love to say, and I say it all the time on this podcast: don't forsake the wisdom that God has placed inside of you for the knowledge that's being presented to you. Do not forsake the wisdom that God has placed inside of you for the knowledge that's being presented to you. And I always explain it like this: every day, knowledge is being presented to us, whether you on TikTok, whether you're on here with me, you know, whether you're scrolling, whether you listen to news, whether you're hearing someone's conversation, could be your parents, could be your friends, knowledge every single day. We're being presented with some kind of new information. And depending on who you're listening to, depending on what's coming to you, that knowledge many times combats the wisdom that God has placed inside of us. And so every day, that's the tug of war. Like, are you going to listen to, the nudge that you got about this, telling you about this certain person that you're engaging with? Or are you going to dismiss the thought that told you to say something, to a certain person when you were having the conversation, but you didn't want to because you wanted to remain politically correct, or you didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, all that, right? Maybe something offended you and you didn't want to say it because you want to avoid conflict. However it comes about, right? That comes with the territory of living life, right? Where things come, to combat the truth. And we have to have enough trust. And that trust has to fuel us to exercise our faith, to stand on what we know is true. And I think in this situation, going back to something that Monica said, going back to what Shireen said, and even Emily, is that when, if you're a woman and you find yourself in a situation like this, I think one of the best things to do is to kind of sit down, either with yourself or with someone that, maybe has been able to experience whatever goal, or whatever life experience that you are aiming for, and you see that they have experienced it in a very holistic way. Sit down with that person. If you can't sit down by yourself to kind of like assess it or weed it out in your own mind, sit down with that person and ask questions and see if there are places where you might be blocking out, right, your own blessing or your own opportunity. And then kind of look at it holistically and say, okay, I know I want this. What is the best way for me to go about, bringing whatever vision I have into fruition? What is the best, right, ideal way, And again, life does happen, and certain things, the way you intended it to happen, doesn't always pan out that way. But we don't start out at a negative, though. I'll always continue to say that. We won't start off at a negative and literally thrust ourselves into a bad situation just because, well, who knows if it's going to pan out anyway. No, you want to give yourself the best advantage. You want to give yourself opportunity to look at things expansively rather than in a narrow view. And I think what can be, as I said before, every fruit reproduces after its own kind. Maybe when it comes to this situation with Ebony K. Williams, in a lot of her other interviews that I've seen her speak about whether, what she calls the mediocrity of men, there are many times where in her delivery or the way she has spoke about men, that there's a limited view on it, right? There's a limited view. As what she said, she feels like her pool is limited, and maybe that limitation is due to her own set of standards and rules and rubric that she set for herself. But you can see how that limited, right, view there has now overflowed in the way that she's going to experience becoming a mother. Because even in that situation, right, it's limited. It doesn't include the whole. It's not holistic, and it's not optimal. And I'm not saying this, again, to down her. I'm literally saying things that She has said in an interview that this is not the most optimal way for us as women to do this. I'm doing this, but this is not the most optimal way. Matter of fact, she had an interview on a well-known like morning show, The Breakfast Club, where she literally was having a conversation with another woman who was triggered by a statement that she made, because she had made a statement, which we've talked about on this podcast, where she said she was encouraging women who are going into college, who are or if they're already in college, to not just go get the degree or the certificate that they're going to school for, but also come out with a Mrs. degree, right, or a Mrs. certificate. And she said that she is saying that because she's looking at it in hindsight, as far as what she prioritized, and not being taught to also prioritize relationships. Because as she continued to achieve, and as she continued to hit each goal that she had, in her own words, she felt the pool of men that she would consider and who would also consider her became smaller, right? Which reduced her opportunity to be able to create a family in a more ideal scenario, right? So that's why I think this conversation is important, and I'm always grateful at her vulnerability and her transparency in explaining that. But I'm also able to see what the cultural shift that's going on, and what will kind of constantly happen if we continue to head in this direction, you know? So I think definitely having conversations like this, having conversations where we prioritize relationships, where we relational EQ, right? And prioritize developing skill sets in the relationship space, and also prioritize family planning, like, talking about those things and what does that look like, would help, right, to kind of combat that issue, to where we're not now just like throwing all hands up in the air and saying, oh, well, we're just going to do it ourselves now, which is really not yourself, because without that sperm, that initial sperm, you can't get pregnant at all. And it's the structure is built that way so that we can understand that we need both, or it's not happening. The importance of both is necessary, right, for different reasons. So, but we've seen it through history. If we can find a way, if we can find a way to shortcut the original process, we will. And then, like, put a false idea or illusion of love, or a mentality to think that it'll be okay, even though we use the shortcut, but it's not. So I think that's the scenario. So, but I appreciate, as always, you guys spending some time with me, especially for those of you guys who took time to type out. I really appreciate it, because that takes some time. So let me read, I think. I have some comments from Emily, these last few comments from Emily that I didn't read. So let me do that, and then I'll wrap it up for you guys, because we've been off for a while. I didn't realize it was 10:40. Oh, my goodness. Usually I try to get off at like 9:30. But Emily says, also, I think you said something about sons who were raised by single mothers experience mental illnesses more than children with both parents. There might have been something about how people who were raised by single parents are more likely to commit crimes. Yeah, no, I didn't say sons experience more mental illness, even though that's something I could look into. But no, I was saying that particularly with sons who are raised by single mothers, yes, they commit more crimes. There's a lot of other statistics that go along with it, because of the absence of the father in their life, the absence of the male presence. It will create an impact in the child, and just like, the necessity of a mother, and having a motherly presence in your life, you know. they're both necessary. We're both necessary. I think God makes it very clear because there's no child that can't come in this life, that can come in this life. You need both the mother and father, So, yeah, but I think definitely in culture right now, the presence of the father is not being as honored as I think it should be. And we're seeing the impact of it greatly. So I'm hoping a shift will come soon, sooner than later, in society where the honor of the father, and the male presence in our life and in our communities will will go. I don't know if I want to say go back to its original place. I don't know. Just be revered because it's important. It's really important. And unfortunately, I think the conversation, a lot of the conversations that are being had about, the male presence and fathers in the household are coming from a point of view kind of like, what the tone and the sentiments that Ebony K. Williams has, which is like the mediocrity of men. Like men are mediocre. And therefore, the women can't find, good men. So therefore, they have to take things in their own hands. And I beg to differ with that argument, especially if it's the fact that a lot of the men are not even being considered due to just their status in life, or their resources is not equal, financial resources not equal to the woman. I would have to differ, with that argument. So, but here's the thing, right? Because like I said, a lot of the women are looking, they tend to date up. They don't want to necessarily date down when it comes to if they've already acquired a certain amount of financial wealth. They're still looking for men to lead in a certain way, even if that's not what they necessarily say, but that's what it is. And so if the women continue to climb in certain ways, they are going to just automatically not necessarily look a certain amount of group of men. They're not going to look in that way. They're not going to look, or focus on them. And so therefore you could miss out most definitely on a lot of men who might have been good for you. So yeah, Emily also said, I think, that somebody raised by two parents, there are also many mediocre women too. Right, Emily? Say it again. Very true. There are also... By the way, Emily, just to let y'all know, like Emily she's wise beyond her years. First of all, you could tell she's wise beyond her years because she's listening to my show. And she's like a teenager, by the way. You would never know. But she's well wise beyond her years. Absolutely, Emily. There are many mediocre women too. Absolutely. So great conversation tonight, guys. Great conversation. Hey, Dunya Enterprise. I'm just now getting ready to get off, but I appreciate you coming in. I will be back on Thursday evening at 8 p.m. I've missed talking to you guys, so I'm glad I came back on tonight. Really good conversation about this new look and journey of single motherhood. I'll have to see if I will continue the conversation when I come on, or we'll talk about something else. So we'll see. But thank you guys. If you enjoyed it, thank you to any of the newcomers who came in. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad that you found me. And if you liked anything that I said, please do not hesitate to go to my YouTube channel. It is titled Forever Friends Academy, same as the show. Definitely subscribe, like, and comment so that this type of conversation can be spread. Definitely, if you think of anybody who you know would like benefit from the content, definitely tell them. I know this woman who comes on Thursday evenings and Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right? She's a coach, she's a singer, and we talk about a lot of interesting relationship topics. I think you can gain from it. So definitely send them my way. Definitely subscribe, like, and comment. All of the full live videos are on my YouTube channel. I only put snippets on IG and all the other platforms. So definitely, I would appreciate, you know, if you guys do that, I would appreciate it because it would help me, grow to be great. One of the questions today I asked was, tell me something you want to be great at. And I told them the thing that I want to be great at is basically being able to spread messages of truth to people and help bring clarity and help people, grow to the best version of themselves that they can be, you know. So it will help spread the truth. So I appreciate you guys. All right. So definitely like, comment, and subscribe. And I will be back on Thursday at 8 p.m. Oh, Emily wants to be great at singing. Yes, Emily, that's awesome. That's an awesome goal. I also, I also want to be great at singing. I told them that in the beginning, but it's more so, because there's plenty of great singers as far as like the whole skill set of singing, right? I more so want to be a compelling singer. I want to be great at storytelling. I want to be able to, when people hear my voice, allow it to resonate with their soul, resonate with their spirit, and hopefully bring some lightness to them and in their life. So yeah, I also answered that earlier on. But I guess it still goes on with the same thing that I said. I just, want to be able to spread truth, whether that's through my music or whether it's me coming on with you guys or whether it's through writing books. I'm okay with forsaking my privacy and becoming a spectacle just to share the truth of God with as many people as I can and hopefully help it affect so many other areas in their life, especially the most important ones, like their relationship with themselves, relationship with their creator, and relationship with the loved ones that they have in their life. So, great conversation. Have a great night, folks. I will be back on Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It has been lovely, as always, talking to you guys. And as I always like to say, until next time, always remember to live to love freely. Bye.